welcome to the third Spirit of Money, Session 3, Investing for Everyone. So today is Juneteenth, and it's very important for me to honor that. What came to me when I was thinking about Juneteenth is just how hard every little step was. Even if you look at the time when the holiday was first created or celebrated in the midst of and just after the Civil War, there were black codes that basically continued slavery, and it took the 13th and 14th Amendments to the United States Constitution to make those illegal, even after the Emancipation Proclamation. And the 14th Amendment in particular, I don't read these things all the time, but it seemed especially relevant given what's happening today. All persons born or naturalized in the United States, and goes on to detail very clearly the rights afforded to those people. And even then, even with 2 amendments to the Constitution, it still took the Military Reconstruction Act a year later to give Black men the right to vote, which again is unbelievable, the pace of change. And then in Reconstruction, sure, this was more front and center, but then during the late 19th century and the early 20th century and the Jim Crow laws, it's like big steps backward. And so I suppose that's how it goes. I've been feeling certainly frustration and anger and fear. And just in case sometimes we get too far in the weeds, yes, we are talking about money in a very specific tactical way here. Do this, don't do that. But the reason we're doing that is because money infuses almost everything we do. And if you look around you and you see a lower level of consciousness than you'd like in the world of money, it shouldn't be a big surprise, because the people who are most active and most in control are at a different level of consciousness. That's what we're doing here, is bringing ourselves into that world, into power, into control, at least of ourselves, to change the level of consciousness in money, in the world, in life, in the universe. So yes, we're getting very specific. We're getting in the weeds. But that's why. Tony, you made it. I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah,
Did you want to say anything about Juneteenth or anything?
Well, you nailed 2 things. One, I love that you put this into context of the holiday. And the thing I was thinking about when you were sharing that transcends Juneteenth, but is related to it, is this concept we've talked about before about intergenerational wealth.
Yes.
Yeah, one of the things that separates really the haves from the have-nots as we perceive that is this idea of money that has been passed down. A lot of people inherit money and resources and the language of money, and other people, don't at all and have to kind of build that from the ground up, and hence why we're having these conversations. And I will share with everyone, I think I mentioned in another call, my mother, when she passed away, did not have a lot of wealth at all. However, she left me a car and she left me about $20,000, and it completely changed my life around. And I started to really understand the concept of intergenerational wealth. Yeah, I had a car I didn't have to buy or make payments on. I had money for the first time in the bank, that it was just this perfect buffer. And after the fire that I experienced in Santa Barbara, Sunny and I moving to LA, that and some other things that she left my brother and I made all the difference and directly translated into the wealth that I'm now managing as it is in my life. So yeah, so the Juneteenth thing, being able to tie that in, that's the thing that a lot of people of color have, that's been the missing piece for a lot of them, was not having the knowledge of the resources passed on. But as we've been talking about in this series here, all of us have the ability to start to transcend those limitations, right? And as you said, move into positions of power relative to being more in control of our finances. So that's it. Hello, everybody.
Thank you. And at least as important as money or the car, even if those aren't something that any of us are able to pass on. I very much hope that you are to anyone that you care to. The knowledge, the wisdom, the ways of being with money are also valuable, and that's also passed down. That's also a characteristic of generational wealth. Uh, it's sometimes people bandy this around that lottery winners end up bankrupt, or it's actually not a true statistic. People tend to keep the money and do pretty well. I had to bust that myth. But there is something in there that different people from different groups, from different families learn how to manage money differently. And you can take that on yourself. You can pass that on to your family members, to children, to parents. So
Yeah,
that's the other part of
that's a
generational wealth.
really crucial piece, is the kind of the culture around money that we inherit or grow up in. When our very first meeting, we talked about that I was definitely one of those people that the minute language around money entered the conversation, some part of my brain would just shut off. Because yeah, it's like talking to a lawyer reading a contract, and suddenly you realize there's this whole language that you don't understand, right? Yeah. And I was in that category too. And when I started seeing this whole concept in spiritual communities around lack consciousness, it is a real thing in the sense of, by the time my mom left me that money, there wasn't a lot of it. But by then I understood what to do with it relatively. Yeah, I didn't go out and like, woohoo, I got money, I'm going to blow it. Yeah. I think most of us are in survival mode, so much so that the minute an extra $1,100, whatever it is, comes in, you already have a list of things that are urgent. And no part of you thinks about, how can I make this money grow or do anything with? Right? It's just not part of our language. So you're right. I didn't grow up with that at all. Yeah, money in my family meant pay bills. Or not, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, and that's something we're going to talk about tonight in detail. So we will go ahead. So I will begin tonight, as we have, with this invocation: health in the body, peace in the spirit, love in the heart. It is this that we wish for ourselves, and it is this that we wish for all our brothers and our sisters. Health in the body, peace in the spirit, love in the heart, open paths. All right. I've said this before, got to say it again. I am a financial advisor. I'm registered in the state of California, and my business is a registered investment advisor. That means I'm legally responsible for what I say. And when I give financial advice, if it's not in the best interest of the people I'm helping or the organizations I'm helping, then I'm legally responsible for that. When I give financial advice, I've got all the information about you or about whoever I'm helping, family, nonprofit, whatever it is, to be able to give financial advice. Therefore, since I don't have that information for you, this is not financial advice. I'm giving examples, and they're the best examples I can think of. I think it's the best starting place for you to do what you're going to do. But I do need to distinguish between specific individual personal financial advice and this, which is not that. All right. My intention for tonight is to share in a very specific way why, whether you're in debt, not in debt, in a position to save money, in a position not to save money, how to begin to accrue power and freedom to yourself. That's why I'm here. That's what I'm sharing. That's my intention. And I invite you to take a moment. We'll pause for just a few seconds to ask yourself why you're here, and let it guide your experience, your questions, your engagement. All right. It's been a little while. We met last in April, and so I'm going to do a little bit of review quickly. So some of this is familiar because we looked at it last time. what we're talking about throughout everything that I've shared is the idea, the concept, and the reality of financial independence. It has a specific meaning that you have the ability to have on your side of the ledger enough money that your life and everything you want to do is paid for. Now, if that's not true today, it's not true for me, you might think, oh, well, that sounds nice. I'm not there. But every step that you make closer to that gives you more power, more freedom, more choices. If something comes up, you need a set of tires, or you need to travel to visit a loved one who's suddenly sick and you don't have the money, your choices are different than if you have $500 or $1,000 in the bank and it doesn't have to go on a credit card. So this isn't a 1 or a 0. It's not on or off. You're not financially independent or you're not. Every step of the way closer or towards that eventual goal gives you more choices, more freedom, and more power. And that's why we're talking about this. What enables that, it may sound too simple to be true, is savings rate. And we talked about that last time. Savings rate, very simply, is if you earn $100, how much of it do you keep? If you earn $40,000 in a whole year and you save 20, then you have a 50% savings rate. If it's a big year and you make 100K, you save 50, you have a 50% savings rate. Some years it may be negative, some years it may be small, but the amount that you save compared to what you earn determines exactly how long it'll take you to reach financial independence. And if you're at a 50% savings rate, you can get there in about 13 years. And that's what these show. So that doesn't mean anything less than 50% isn't worth doing. 1% is fantastically better than 0%, and 5% is amazing. Or even, if things were a little rough in the last month and it was negative, well, getting back to 0 is fantastic. So this was the assignment for last time. Whether you looked at a month, whether you looked at the last year, what's your savings rate? We talked about types of accounts very briefly. I didn't focus on all these ones with all the letters and the names and everything. Again, we'll talk about that later. That's not fundamental to what we're doing here. They're important, but they're not the fundamentals. We talked about what to do first. And the first and most important thing was to make sustainable changes so that you can save a small amount. And this will grow over time. That might go towards paying off debt if you have it. It might go towards saving up $500 so the next thing that comes along that you weren't expecting doesn't go on the credit card. Even a very small savings rate makes that possible. We're still reviewing. That's why I'm going fast. We talked about what to invest in, and that's the topic of today. So we're going to go into more depth. But last time, you might look at the news or CNBC or whatever comes across your screen, and there's 17 different experts saying all sorts of nonsense. It's entertainment, plain and simple. It's there because it gets people excited, just like political arguments on Twitter or Facebook. It's entertainment. What you need to know to invest successfully is on this page. You might need 1 or 2 investments, maybe as much as 4. And the ones that I've called out here, except for this one, US bonds, they're all environmental, social, governance filtered. Socially responsible investing, there's some attempt to filter out companies that are doing harm to planet, people, environment. So ESGV is, VSGX is, and DFSE, those are all environmental, social governance oriented investments. So that's it. Those are your investments. All right. So yes, there's about 4,000 individual stocks in just the US stock market, not even talking about the Toronto Stock Exchange or London or the Brazilian Stock Exchange. And there's many more mutual funds and ETFs and all sorts of craziness. You don't need it. And if you ever wonder, I've been talking about this weird code word looking thing, ESGB. It's an exchange traded fund. If you wanted to know, okay, what the heck is that? What am I investing in? Just because Aubrey said so. If you Google or search ESGV, you get this link and you can see what it's invested in. And most of these names you'll probably recognize. Not all of them are my favorite companies, so they aren't Aubrey's favorite company list, but this is the S&P 500 filtered for environmental social governance. Now, as I've said, we can get more specific with direct indexing and just pick the companies we like. It's a little more complicated, but this is a fantastic first step, and it's very simple and the barriers are low. We talked about compounding. If you took $100 and left it for 10 years, you'd have about double if it grew at 7%, which is what the stock market has done for the last 115 years on average. If you added just $10 a month to that $100, you'd end up with $2,200. Okay, so this is what the credit cards are doing to us when they charge us interest. When you're the one investing, now you're the one on the other side of the table. And if we look out a little further, not just 10 years, but 20, 30, 40, 50, or 60 years, just $100 with $10 a month added to it turns into $118,000. That's the power of compound interest. So $100 or $10 a month, that's where we might start. But with that savings rate going up, that's not where we end. This is how you do it. So you can either be on the side of the table earning the interest and doing the investing, or you can be on the other side paying the interest. Now, I'm going to talk about debt. Again, we're still reviewing. So the assignment, again, it's I hate homework, was to look at your savings rate. How much did you save in the last month compared to how much did you bring in? And go from there. So this is new. Before we go on, any questions or comments or thoughts? All right. Keep going. I know sometimes it takes a while to get to that unmute button. Okay. So my savings rate from roughly 2004 to 2014, I'm not sure how negative it was, but it was highly negative, to the tune of $90,000 in credit card debt by the end of it. So I know all about negative savings rates. And I was putting things like groceries and Amazon and all sorts of things on that card with the best intentions of paying it off. And then some other unexpected thing would come up, like 2 kids. So that's life. That's normal. If that's where you're at, you will not get any judgment from me. It's not useful. It's not helpful. What is helpful is just to know where you are. So if you're in a negative savings rate, if your expenses, maybe looking back over a couple months or a year, are more than what you're bringing in, we want a positive savings rate. So we need to make some changes. If you've got a savings rate, 1% or more, then we're going to create an emergency fund, even a couple $100, $500, $1,000. So the next time something comes up, like I said, a trip to see a friend or a family member who's sick, that doesn't go on the credit card, or you don't have to borrow that money from a friend. Even that small amount of money makes such a difference. If you have debt, then we're going to begin paying it off. And I'm a very strong proponent, and I did this, that if you're paying off debt, you should also be investing. You'll hear from some people that, it's a matter of opinion, that if you're paying off debt, that's the only thing you should do. Problem is that can go on for a long time. And it took me 4 years, for example, to pay off that debt. And I'm surprised it happened that quickly. It might take longer, but in the meantime, your whole consciousness is focused on debt. So my advice is, at the same time as you're paying that off, even if it's just a small amount, begin to invest. And I'm going to show you how and tell you how. The reason is because even as you're decreasing the influence and the impact of that debt on yourself, which is absolutely important. You're increasing your own knowledge and power and familiarity with investing, with savings, so that then when you're done paying off the debt, and however much that is per month is freed up, that you know what to do with it. And so if your savings rate is positive, 1%, 0.1%, then the last step is to increase it. And if your savings rate is 50% or more, the steps are the same. And yes, this is possible. Not all at once. It doesn't happen just by snapping your fingers, but it's possible. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
What percent should be our goal if we're just starting to save again, if we haven't done it for years?
Of course, it depends on your situation. If the money available is small, if things are tight, but you're just able to save a little, I think 5% is a great place to start. And believe it or not, it's the same for individuals as it is for small businesses. A lot of small businesses never make a profit. They make the same mistake I did, thinking, oh, if I just invest more, if I just bring in more customers, then I'll make a profit. But no, 5% is a great place to start for an individual saving. That's your profit. And if you can't do that consistently, then make it lower. Make it 1% or 2%. A lot of times, the advice you see out there, they stop at something like 10 or 20 or 20%. And compared to most people, those saving rates of 10 or 20% are very high. But if you want to be done with working for other people, not in 30 or 40 years, but in 10 or 15 years, then if you can get to 25, 35, 50% savings rate, you will be done. So start as low as you need to. 5% is a great place to start. If you bring in $100, that means sending 5 to your investment account. If you get a job and it pays $1,000, that means you send $50 to your investment account. That's 5%. So before you do anything else, take that $50 of the 1,000 and send it over to your Vanguard brokerage account. It's recommending a specific company. You can use any brokerage you want. I recommend Vanguard because their costs are low and because they're owned by their own mutual funds. So they're incentivized by their ownership structure to keep costs low, and they're the only company like that in the brokerage business, at least. But others are fine too. If you work with Schwab or Fidelity or any of the others, it's fine. They do the same thing. Does that help, Raluca?
Thank you so much. Thank you. Discipline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, the most common behavior pattern that I've seen, and I certainly did, is you get money in. First thing you do is pay your bills, and then you go do something fun or get some food if you don't have any in the house, maybe go out to get something to eat. And you might say to yourself, well, with what I have left over, I'll save that. And this isn't my own invention. Pay yourself first is a very common phrase. But that's the idea. If that $100, $1,000 comes in, send 5, send 50. If you're paid by an employer, you can even put on your direct deposit 2 accounts and have it go directly to the Vanguard brokerage account with a fixed amount or a fixed percentage. So then it takes even less decision out of your hands. You don't even see it.
A thought came to me with what Lucas shared about the discipline aspect of it.
Yes.
One of the things that other facilitators of meditations that I lead talk about is someone will contact us and want to attend a weekend. And they'll give me the story, I really need some healing. I really want to be there, but I only have $50. And then Shereen and I will be like, oh, that's so interesting. We just saw you were at Lightning in a Bottle last weekend. And my thing with that is like, it's not a judgment thing. I get it. It's exciting. Your friends are all going to be there. But the thing that always strikes me is like, well, clearly that was a priority for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you got it together and made that happen, right? And now you're placing the responsibility of that decision onto me somehow, right? And it just reminded me, it's kind of in that realm of discipline. It's like, pay yourself first. I'm like, well, look, if this is really important to you, this spiritual work you're calling it, right? Then contact me and make some kind of arrangement that makes sense, that also respects the level of time and energy and expertise that I've spent over the years building the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it's more about me kind of getting them to shift and respect themselves. I'm like, you're telling me that this is really important to you, it's something that you really need, right? But you didn't set aside anything for it. But all these other things I see you doing that you're posting clearly is also really important to you, and apparently more important. Yeah, and I remember when I was thinking about that, it was like, put your money where your mouth is. I started realizing like, well, I kind of do that too. Meaning like the doctor would say, oh, you need these new eye drops. I have glaucoma. And I'm like, I'm not paying $240 for that. Right. And then the next day something will come up and I'm like, I'm in and I'll pay $300 for it. So it's all just an idea of like, once you really start prioritizing yourself, it's like you said, okay, I just got $100. I'm going to put $5 of it away. It's kind of the same mentality. It's like, what are your real priorities, right? Financially. So that was.
Yeah. We're also talking about behavior change. We're talking about relationships. And there's a whole constellation of habits and behaviors and relationships that drive your behavior with everything. Where you go, who you spend time with, what you eat, where you spend your money. And so when you're choosing to change something, take it seriously. It's, yes, deciding is important, but don't expect the moment of decision to be the last time you have to work on this. There are many, many connections in good ways to everything you're doing as you're doing it now. And you're going to be disrupting that if you make a change. So expect it to feel uncomfortable, and expect maybe friends or family to say, what are you doing? You have to come to this. Why weren't you at Lightning in a Bottle? Whatever it is. But it is your choice. And people are not necessarily all powerful. But my observation is people have much more power than they give themselves credit for. And that choice you were illustrating is an example of that. And one of my favorite sayings is, if nothing changes, nothing changes. Or the flip of it is, if you want something to change, something has to change. So often when I introduce the idea, okay, well, what if we looked at ways to increase your income? Or what if we looked at ways to decrease your expenses? Well, I couldn't change that because of this. And I couldn't change this because of that. And it's all about the things that have to stay the same. So some things can stay the same. Some things need to change. Right. Debt. We've already talked about it some. I want to go a little deeper into debt just because it shows up, not in everyone's life, but in a lot of people's lives. And for some people where debt isn't present, there's an aversion to it that might even be harmful to their financial prospects, because debt is a tool. Like every other tool, you can use it to build things, you can use it to break things. Debt isn't all good or all bad. What it allows us to do is it allows us to have access to something sooner by having the money now that it might take us 10 or 20 or 50 years to save up. And having that thing or that opportunity now may be worth the price that you pay in interest, to receive that money from the person who's loaning it to you. So you think of a car. In some cases, a car may be someone's livelihood, and it does facilitate cash flow for them. Now, cars are very unlikely to appreciate in value. They almost always go down in value. But I say here, the best use of debt is to buy an asset that either cash flows or appreciates or both. So here's some examples you can think about them. Does a house cash flow? Well, not if you're living in it. If you're owning it and renting it out, maybe, if the rent is greater than the expenses. And don't forget the roof that needs to be replaced every 20 years and the water heater and on and on. But a house can cash flow. It can also appreciate in value, unless it's February of 2009, then no, right? Cars, they can cash flow, but most of the time not. And they almost never appreciate in value. Groceries, no, they're an expense. We need them, but they're not going to cash flow or appreciate in value. Businesses, if you took out a loan to buy a business or start a business, sometimes they cash flow, not always. Sometimes they appreciate in value and you can sell it. Not always, but they can. Art typically doesn't cash flow, but it can appreciate in value. And I added experiences because they don't necessarily pay cash dividends, but a phrase that's come up in the last few years is memory dividends. If you use money, even debt, to have an experience that will enrich the rest of your life, that could be a good use of debt. You might not have that opportunity ever again with the people who are alive at that time. So all of those could be uses of debt, and there's not a clear-cut line to say always do this, never do that. But the way to think about it is, does this cash flow? Is it likely to appreciate in value? And if the answer to both of those is probably no, then consider very carefully whether you should use debt for that. And in my case, groceries were not a good use of debt, especially not paying 18% interest. So if you have high interest debt, and I know that's a vague term, and try to be specific, more than 8%, pay it off. If it's less than that, it's a maybe. And there's some people who want nothing to do with debt, either because of personal beliefs or negative experiences. That's fine. It's a choice, but you're giving up a tool. So I firmly believe that debt is a very important part of the financial toolbox. Just use it carefully. But assuming you have some debt you want to pay off, and you said, okay, I'm going to pay it off, how do you do it? And for better or worse, it's simple and hard at the same time. Reduce expenses, increase income. And so we can actually spend the whole session on this, and I can give you techniques and real numbers for all of these. But here's some ideas that I came up with. If you have a new car with payments on it at 6, 7, 8% interest, sell it. Pay cash for a reliable used car. Move out of the expensive one bedroom and get a roommate. Go from Verizon to Mint Mobile or US Cellular. You might pay a third or less of the monthly sell fee. Shop for your car insurance. Not going to read all of them, but the one that was the most powerful for me was we tend to do what our friends do. So if your friends are traveling to places you can't afford and eating at places you can't afford and going to festivals, I guess can't afford isn't the right. That if you made paying off debt a priority, you would choose not to spend your money on, then you might choose to spend time with different friends. And on the income side, the single best way if you're an employee to get a raise is to change employers. At a company that you're at, you might get 2, 3, 5% raises, but it's typical to get a 10 or 20% or more raise switching employers if you're able to. And in all cases, negotiate. I was and even still am very nervous about that. In some cultures, from the time people are 2 years old, they're negotiating at the market. Not everyone has that experience. And so that can make you literally millions of dollars over your lifetime. So do negotiate salary, do negotiate raises, do negotiate benefits. And in my experience, at least in this dominant American culture, women negotiate less, and to help bridge that pay gap that absolutely exists, negotiation is one of the tools that we can use to bridge that gap. So there's resources, there's podcasts. I even know a coach who her whole business is teaching women how to negotiate in business settings. So there's resources out there. Some teachers, for example, they'll take on additional paid roles at their school and make more money that way. It's not an option at every job. And then sometimes there's international versions of the job you're doing where you might make more money. Yeah, Raluca, her name is Lisa Gates, the coach that I was talking about. And her business, I haven't spoken to her in a while, but her business is called She Negotiates. And I'll write that in there. The other resource for that is a woman called Tori Dunlap. And her book, I'll write her name in the, I think I sent her name out in the email. Tori Dunlap wrote a book called The Financial Feminist. She has a podcast, blog, and website called Her First 100K. And I heard her first on the Choose FI podcast, where specifically she talked about how to negotiate your salary on her first interview. And then the second one, she was talking about her book, The Financial Feminist. Thank you, Luke. So yeah, I highly recommend Tori Dunlap as well as Lisa Gates. Tori Dunlap covers a lot of ground other than negotiating. She covers just about everything I'm talking about as well, specifically for women. But I find what she's saying applies to everyone. So I love her book, and it's my second most gifted book to the people I work with and friends and family. All right, any questions? And if you're working on one, I'm going to add one more technique. I consider this a quote unquote advanced technique. I used it, so I'll share it. Once you have proven to yourself that you are reliably holding down a positive savings rate and you're reliably paying off your debt, and you're not, even in times of stress or distress, putting money on the credit card, only then would I consider transferring balances to a so-called 0% credit card. I say so-called because they charge a 3.5% balance transfer fee. So it's really a 3.5% card. But if you're paying 24.99%, 24, 25%, 3.5% is fantastic. And those will often extend for 15, 18, 21 months, sometimes even 24 months. But only if you've shown yourself that you're consistently paying it off, because the danger is you move the money off of the one card and then you run the other one back up and now you have twice as much. And that's what they're counting on, by the way. That's the casino winning. So I use that. I think I did that 3 or 4 times in my 4-year debt payoff journey, and I kept track of it very carefully. So it's an advanced technique. It can save you money, but just make sure you're solid first. Any questions about that?
Yeah, I have a question. You do need a good credit score, right, to get approved? So that doesn't really work for everybody.
Yeah, that's true. You do need a good credit score, and that you can improve over time. I've gotten some questions from folks about using the services that help you improve your credit. And there's lots of shady ones and there's a few good ones. They charge you some money. And in my experience, they sort of tell you what you already know, which is make your payments. If you have any sort of loan, make sure you pay it off every month, like a car loan or a mortgage or anything. There's really no magic trick, but those services can help you get organized. So if it helps, it helps. But just in case you're under the illusion that there's any magic trick for fixing your credit, if there are errors or things that are false on your credit report, then you can email, call, and write letters to have those corrected. It's a hassle. That will help. But other than that, it is paying regularly over time that will do it. Okay, I'm going to finish up.
No, I just want to
Go
say I
ahead.
use a very good one, kickoff. The problem is kickoff is great if you, again, have the discipline.
Mm,
So it really helped. Like, I feel like it increased by, I don't know, 60 points or whatever when you first sign up.
mhm,
And then I don't know exactly how to explain this. You borrow against your own cash. Like, it looks
mhm,
like it's a loan, but you're just paying like $5 or $10 a month, and it looks like you're paying consistently something, and that's how it's helping.
mhm.
But anyway, I lost a job recently, so that went like even the kickoff history is not good anymore. So it can backfire. But it's a great tool.
I'll check that out. Maybe I'll put a little summary of it in
It's
the
very
email
good.
I send out after. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of that one. Any other questions before we move on? This is the last thing I have prepared. Then we're just going to talk. All right. So, investing. We've talked about a little already. If you're paying off debt, also invest. So, what do I mean by that? Step one, have a positive savings rate. I think we've covered that pretty well. The next step is to save up 500 to $1,000. Ideally in a high yield savings account, but with that amount of money, really anywhere, it's there so that the next surprise that comes along doesn't go on the credit card. That's what it's for. So if it's in a checking account, that's fine. If it's in a savings account that isn't high yield, that's fine. Tony, you're asking about Beneficial State Bank last time. I love their checking. I love their banking in general, their whole organization. But their savings account does not pay, it pays like a middle of the road interest rate. I forget what it was. It might have been like 2.5% or something, which is
Yeah,
good.
I don't remember. It's funny, my one question to you, but it wasn't related to the thing we talked about so far, was me remembering that you said that. And I actually have a money market account with them. So as you know,
Yeah.
it kind of like works as a savings account that basically does have a higher return than I think the normal savings account does. But
Slightly higher, but not not as high as it should be.
yeah, you made a recommendation in the last call for
It
something
was this one.
similar to their values, but had a better interest rate.
Yeah, Climate First Bank is the
That's
one I
it.
recommended. Yeah.
I'm going to check them out for sure.
Yeah, you know, it, it's not such a huge difference that I would necessarily, make it the first thing on my to-do list tomorrow.
Right.
But especially if someone is choosing for the first time to open a savings account or a high yield savings account, this is an option. It's not the only good option. There are other good options.
Got it.
If you're an employee and you work for a company that has a 401k or some other sort of retirement savings plan, and there's a company match, that's free money. That's part of your salary. And if you can contribute to get that match, the return on investment, ROI, is greater than 80%. And you're not going to get that with any investment. It's like if I put in $100, 180 comes out, and I have a spreadsheet where you can play with it. So if you work for someone and they have something like that, they come by different names. You can, if you're not sure, like teachers and public service employees, they have a plan called a 403B or a 457B, all these letters and numbers. Feel free to send me a message or ask me. But if there's a match, as in if you put in a little, then they put in some, get that. That's the best return you'll ever get. The next step is opening a brokerage account. A brokerage account is just an investment account. It means you can buy things like stocks and bonds and mutual funds and ETFs. And I suggest Vanguard. I gave you the reasons, but if you have a reason to go somewhere else, that's fine. I just find it helps to, the fewer what ifs that are left, the more likely someone is to do the thing. So I'm not saying that you can't do other things. I'm just giving you a direction because I found that helpful. The next step, and we already talked about this, is send a fixed percentage of the money you bring in to that brokerage account. So here I give the example of 5%. If I do a job and I make $1,000, I'm sending $50. That's 5% to that brokerage account. That's your profit. You know, if you're the business of Kim, of Lauren, of Jessica, Christina, Laura, Raluca, Manny, Tony, Kim, that's your profit. So profit first. That's what I tell individuals. That's what I tell businesses. That's what I tell myself. Because if you say, well, if I have some left over, then I'll make a profit. Doesn't always happen. In fact, often stuff comes up. So that's why we do it that way. So now you sent that $50 to Vanguard. You're not done. If you just send it there, it's going to sit in cash. It'll automatically be in a money market account, which is what Tony was talking about. It'll be earning about 4%, which is great, but we're not done. Once it's at Vanguard, you need to choose what to invest it in. If your money is money that you're investing for more than 10 years from now, you know, if you're 35 and you're investing, I don't know, maybe you think maybe I'll do something else when I'm 50, you know, or if you're 60 and you think, I think I'll keep doing this till I'm 75. Both of those are more than 10 years from now. Now anything can happen, but that's what I'm talking about. If it's more than 10 years from now, you're investing in stocks. And ESGV is an exchange traded fund that is the S&P 500 filtered for environmental social governance. It has hundreds of companies in it, so you're investing in hundreds of companies at once. And it has the benefit that as companies perform poorly, they fall out of the bottom. And the companies that do well actually come up and are included into it. So the phrase some people use is that it's self-cleansing. What that means is, unlike an individual company, it's not going to go to zero, or, you know, unless, yeah, I get, you know, if you need your bug out bag and you're going to the bunker, then maybe it could go to zero. But other than that, individual companies can go to zero, but a collection of 500 companies that make up the largest companies in the US stock market are not going to zero. If you're looking at a shorter time frame, then you're still going to invest in ESGV, but it'll be about 2/3 of your money goes into that, and about 1/3 goes into bonds. And BND is an investment. It's a bond exchange traded fund that includes both US Treasury bonds and very high grade corporate bonds. And it's just like ESGV, it spreads it out over many different investments.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
I think you mentioned this last time, but are you saying that if you open a Vanguard account, like I do that tomorrow, I put $100 in, when you open that account, are they asking you what you want to invest in, or are you just opening the account?
You're just opening the account, and the $100 you put in there will just be in cash.
Right.
And it's automatically in a money market fund, which is nice. Not all brokerages are like that. With Schwab, they don't do that. So go, you know, good for Vanguard. But yeah, once you put that $100 in, then you have to click another button and say, buy ESGV, or with $66 of my 100, buy ESGV, and with 34, buy BND. So 2 clicks in that case.
Got it.
And believe me, there are, I don't know if you want to call it horror stories, but there are people who contributed for sometimes decades thinking they were putting money into an investment, and it was going into the brokerage, but it was sitting in cash. And so that final step is very important.
That's very good to know. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I have a person that I'm helping pro bono, and he has agreed the next time we have our next meeting, we're going to do a video of him opening a Vanguard brokerage account. And I'll blur out any personally identifying information, just because there's nothing like seeing it done. Maybe there's probably someone on YouTube who's done it already, but I just want to do it so I have it, because again, obstacles, each little obstacle, it stops someone, and it can mean the difference between working 10 years or 20 years more than they need to when they really want to be doing something else. So these little obstacles matter. I'm trying to knock them down in every possible way I can. All right. Okay, I said that was the last one. I wanted to let the crowd drive a little here for next time, whenever the next time is, probably about a month from now. These were some suggestions that I had. And I'll also send this out with the email. And I will go with whatever is most present and needed. Do you want to see case studies of someone who's like you but not you? Or do you want that case study to be you? Do you want to go even deeper into a deep dive on debt and see month by month what it looks like to pay it off? With a real example. This was my favorite one. Finally understand taxes. Ooh, fun, said no one. And yet, they're the single biggest expense for most people. So there's huge leverage in benefit in understanding taxes. So you don't need to tell me now. Like I said, I'll send this out. But think about what you most need, most benefit, and what would be the most interesting to you or helpful to you or someone you know and care about.
I think it would be really cool if each of us, not to each other, but to you, I'm suggesting that each of us write Aubrey really briefly, this is exactly where I'm at financially. Zero money, no job, or I have this amount of money, this job, whatever it is. And then based on those responses, you could tailor the next thing. So it's kind of responding to each. So you have a sense of where this particular group actually is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to be clear, that would be 100% confidential between me and the person who sent me the email, unless I have your written permission to share any detail of that. So before I bring it into a public place like this, I would write an email back and say, is it okay if I share it in this way? Or do you just want it addressed without any reference to your specifics? Because I know this is sometimes very charged stuff.
I have a question. Oh, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that's a great idea because, yeah, for some of us, it's like, I'm not speaking of me. I think our group probably runs a gamut of people that are probably in survival mode and trying to figure out how to get out of it. And then there's somebody like me who I'm definitely not in survival mode at the moment, but at the same time, I'm finally financially stable. But at the age of 63, I need to start thinking about what I'm going to be doing next.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My question is around the exchange, because I would love to receive the support. And I don't mind being a case study. Let's first create that success story, right? And then we'll be the case study. But anyway, yeah. Because we love your generosity. At the same time, anyway, this topic keeps coming up today where I'm at the psychedelics conference and my friends met this guy who grows all these plants in Hawaii, and he's just with the plants. And he came to the psychedelics conference and he's giving away plants, microdoses, whatever. And and the message that he told my friends is give, generous. Oh my God, I can't talk. I'm so tired. Give generously.
Mhm.
And I love what you're doing here. And at the same time, yeah, I just feel like we need to figure out an exchange.
Well, yeah, I can speak to that. So when I work with people one-on-one, my hourly rate is $350 an hour. And so to people in certain financial situations, that amount of money doesn't make sense. Like, even if I'm giving the best advice, that amount of money is not helpful. And so my challenge was, how do I help people who are in a situation where they could benefit from something that I could share, and yet direct exchange of money, it just doesn't make sense. So this is part of my answer to that. It's a one too many, one of me, many of others. I'm sharing it on YouTube. And there are also other free resources that I included in the email, people who are honestly much better at this than I am. But sometimes it's the flavor of the person that you connect to that matters more than how flashy their stage show is. um, so that's the exchange. I am growing my business. I, I I am taking on more clients and new clients, individual clients. And one of the things I'm offering is beginning to offer is something I'm calling a one-day financial plan, instead of a big multi-meeting comprehensive financial plan that touches absolutely everything. I'm meeting with people in a single day, a single meeting, and giving them instructions on what to do or not do right now. So that's less costly, but that's still, that's not a fit for everyone. So I'm doing this with no expectation of compensation from anyone here or anyone in this, because this is the way I figured out to help. So no exchange necessary.
I think too, Raluca, and just everybody, back when Sonny and I were thinking of starting Bird Tribe, I checked in with my mentor, Russell, who a lot of you've heard me speak of, and he just gave us such sound advice. He said, look, you spend a lot of time and energy learning to do what you do. And like any other profession, you deserve to be compensated for that. He said to me, however, he said, if you're turning people away for lack of money, he said, you're no longer doing spiritual work. And he explained, and it became the ethos of what we do, which is to be completely okay as a spiritual person. I'm saying this in the context of the title of this thing we're doing, like Spirit of Money. There's nothing wrong with reciprocity where it's appropriate. And the way we took that was, okay, when we do privates and we're working with people that we know can afford what it is that we think we're worth, great, no problem. In a community setting, set the amount of money that we believe is not only worthy of what people are getting, but also fits the financial culture of our community. And within that, in every ceremony, I make sure that there's 1 or 2 spots available for somebody that actually needs support. So for me, it's a way of balancing out. And I think from talking to Aubrey early on, he was kind of coming from the same place. It's like this quote unquote spiritual community, in this context, Bird Tribe, is part of his community, right? So it's actually a way of taking your skill set and offering to the community, right? Knowing that your financial support is going to come from the people who can afford to pay it. And you always, for all of us, we have to find a way to balance that thing out. The guy that was giving away plants is capable of doing it, right? It doesn't affect him in a detrimental way. So that's his level of generosity. Yours might simply be, whatever skill sets you have, well, in addition to the area where I'm charging for this, I'm also going to offer it to this person or that person so that there's a balance so that we can kind of, for me, it's expanding our concept of what reciprocity is. I definitely need reciprocity financially to keep doing what I'm doing and doing it well. And because I have that level of reciprocity consistently, then I remember what Russell said. Oh, and I also need to make sure that, you know, part of the reciprocity is just somebody that actually achieves their goal from coming to Bird Tribe. For me, that's like, yes, right? So that in and of itself becomes also a win-win as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, my marketing brain kicked in. Aubrey, I heard what you said, and we can offer testimonials. We can offer, you know, this could be a membership in the future. I mean, anyway, I'm just putting it out in the future. That, yeah. Anyway, thank you.
I'm happy to, and you know, happy to hear any of those. Yeah. Because yeah, I want it to be accessible. I want it to be sustainable, you know, for me. And that, yeah, that involves money. It involves time, energy, attention, and exchange. And you being here tonight, each of you, and participating, I just wanted to say I appreciate it so very much because I know you're trusting me with something that's very important in your life, and I recognize what a big gesture of trust that is, and want to say thank you.
I just want to add to that to everybody, Raluca. There are several people in the overall Bird Tribe community who I know from talking to them are just having a disastrous time with finances, yet they didn't even sign up for this course and it's free. You know, so the very fact that you guys seize the opportunity to at least maybe expand your horizons around money and, you know, learn what it is that you can learn. For me, yeah, like Aubrey, I'm grateful you guys even said yes to the invitation because most people don't. And a couple of friends, to be honest, obviously I'm not saying their names, I'm a little shocked they're not in this call. With me knowing where they are financially right now, I'm like, are you kidding me? You couldn't even like seize this free thing? And it says more about how we get trapped into, Aubrey touched on it earlier, but my phrasing is the way we can just get trapped into a habitual relationship with money or poverty or survival or whatever it is, you know, and not being willing to at least take the first step, which is just gaining knowledge and insight, you know. Yeah, so for me, because I care so much about our community, it's a win just having you guys all here, you know. Yeah, I would love to see more people that have the values that you guys have also have resources available to make a difference in the world. So for me, that's the payoff. Right?
I just wanted to say, I hope I can convey this right. I feel like the whole concept of care versus overcare and giving versus overgiving is the root of my financial struggles and is a deeply spiritual thing to manage and a big part of what my spiritual journey has been. But that's what it's really boiling down to for me is like really having energetic leadership, you know, over what I'm putting out there and how I'm protecting myself and boundaries. It's all just really intricate.
This is for Aubrey to respond to, but I just want to jump in because it's hot on my mouth as you're saying it. That's one of the reasons the title is Spirit of Money. One of the things that Aubrey and I touched on early on when we were just talking about this possibility is, and he brought it up, I think, in the first course, we're not ever really talking about just money. We're talking about our relationship to money, to abundance, to lack, you know, whatever our story is. And even just taking a course like this, we're calling it a course now, is also ceremonial. It's spiritual because it's helping you to have, to basically get clarification on what your trip is with money. And that in of itself is so valuable. Yeah, and I've gotten that already from the call too, or from the 3 different sessions. It's like looking at, even though I'm now finally gotten Bird Tribe and the other things I'm doing to a place where they're sustainable and they're like functioning well, I still have fear in terms of the unknown around, great, now I'm happy I'm doing all this work. And at the same time, I said earlier, I'm 63. What I haven't done yet is start to look at my own self-care. And that concept of pay myself first, for me, that's the next step. It's like looking at whatever story I have in place around, not wanting to be, it's kind of this idea of like, on one hand, responding to the world calling me forth to be like a spiritual leader, coach, facilitator, all of that, and fully being comfortable with that, while also realizing that it does need to be sustainable. And I need to make sure that I'm going to be taken care of by me, who else is going to do it over the next 10, 20 years. Yeah, so it also becomes a really deep personal dive into just looking at our whole psyche around abundance of money, particularly in the culture that we live in.
Yeah, Jessica, what came up or came to mind with what you shared? The way I have found to work with dynamics like you're talking about, and it's really independent of that specific dynamic, but it applies, is that there's the insight which you've had, which is very important. And then there's taking action. And if you just take action without the insight, often you'll end up repeating the same patterns. And if you just have the insight, it can be thrilling and exciting, and you can talk about it with yourself and with your friends, and it's very valuable insight. But if you don't try something different, do something different, actually put it into the physical relational world, then it's just an insight. And so I like to sort of bounce back and forth, alternate or simultaneously grow, in the way that you intend to grow, with a balance of taking very discrete, real, sometimes boring, small steps, but that are different, and then reflecting back on the insight. That's what the example that comes to mind, I started lifting weights again after a long time, and I could reflect on all the reasons why I didn't, or, what about it made me enjoy it so much before, and why wasn't I enjoying it? What might help me enjoy it more now? But actually putting the weights in the middle of the living room, so I have to almost trip over them to not pick them up. Yes, the insights were important, but I have to actually pick up the weights. So,
Aubrey, do you find that with your regular, like, paid customers, that in the process of supporting them financially, that they also start to kind of self-reflect on the same kind of issues, like relationship with money, their story around it? Like, does it also for them also become kind of a deeper journey?
always.
Thought so.
Yeah. Sometimes they come in with that top of mind, top of heart, top of soul. And the first conversation is about family money patterns, and my dad this, my mom this, and because of that, sometimes that's first. Other times it comes later. The conversation might be, well, I'm wondering if I get let go of my job, am I going to be okay? So it's a very, practical question that I can answer with math and simulations and stuff. But inevitably, it's okay, well, what do you want to do? And do you want to be in a job like that? Have you been wanting to get away from that? And that would be a gift to you to be kicked out. And so sometimes it emerges. But yeah, always. Because as you said, Tony, if it was just about the math, then we can all add and subtract. It is, I mean, at some point it is about, yes, I have a calculator at my desk, but but that's not why whatever's happening is happening.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
If we gotta go, we gotta go. But I just want to say thank you, Jessica, for what you said. I've been going through what you just shared. I feel like it's a woman thing with the wonky boundaries, overgiving. I'm supporting a center in Peru, and I'm observing how my lack of structure of how I'm managing my time. Like I'm overgiving so much. It's like a full-time job, social media job that I'm not getting paid for. So I had to, you know, talk about it, about an exchange. And it's just been like put me in a roller coaster of emotions. Talking about our worth, and also I want to support the elders, and also instead of focusing on just, you know, marketing my own services, I'm here spending hours into pouring into this that is not actually paying my bills right now. So it's such a delicate dance.
Yeah, and that just highlights what we were talking about, that, and Aubrey was just saying, it's not, the money just become, well, there's that phrase, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. That it's hardly ever really just about the finances. It's always deeper. Yeah. And I think, yeah, getting back to the picking up the weights thing, it's one that we get clearer during these calls on what our particular trip is around money or resistances or whatever it is. And the other is what Aubrey is offering. It's like, yeah, it's great that you have that insight about yourself and what Jessica just brought up. Yeah, and I have that too. My teacher Russell would always say, he goes, you're going to have one challenge as you move along. He said, because I have it too. It's called being too nice, meaning generosity. He would tell me, never let go of your tendency to be generous. That's great. But if you can't sustain yourself, you're not going to be very generous in the long term. You just burn yourself out.
Right.
You know?
I put in the text, I think I read every book on burnout I could find when I was still working in a corporate job. And again, lots of insight. But until I left, I didn't feel any better. The best one I found was titled Burnout by the Nagoski sisters. And I can't remember their names, but in it, it's not their phrase, but they describe the difference between human givers, which is how women as a rule are acculturated in our culture, and human beings, which again, it's a generalization, but how men are acculturated. And matches what you were describing, but it's not unique to women only. I was like, wow, that lands. All right, well, we are at our time. Thank you so very much for being here. I'm going to close us out with the convocation.
And remind everyone to, if you can, send Aubrey what your actual current financial status is. I don't think, well, as he was saying, you know, how much detail you give is up to you, but I think it would be helpful for him to be more of service to us if he kind of knew where each person was and what might be good first next steps for them, kind of thing. And Aubrey, you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, you could include numbers, not include numbers. And as I said, I will confirm in writing what I share, if anything, with what you send me, and it's confidential until I do so. Yeah, and I will send out an email. It'll have that invitation to send me that information, and it'll also have the slides and the suggestions for next time. Again, thank you all very, very much. Health in the body, peace in the spirit, love in the heart. It is this that we wish for ourselves, and it is this that we wish for all our sisters and our brothers. Health in the body, peace in the spirit, love in the heart. open paths.